Okay, this is from Holy Grail of Wisdom Quotes by me, Pete Rogers. We're on part 7. We're doing genius quotes. We're going in alphabetical order, okay. So to use many words to communicate few thoughts is the unmistakable sign of mediocrity. To gather much thought into a few words is the stamp of genius. So if you want to get good at doing stuff, what you should do is make it a habit to do that during a mundane thing. For example, if I have to send a mundane, email for whatever the reason, I will try to make it as concise as possible. I'll try to, play a little game with it, do something interesting, clever, or different, whatever. Highlight, bold, make a joke, a pun, a rhyme. The reason I'm doing that is I want to train myself to always do things the best way possible, so that if I do it when I'm at leisure, then when it really matters, I'm just in the habit of always doing good stuff. And so you want to train yourself to be good. Like, for example, when I dictate medical reports, I try to make everything like as good as I can make it. I don't have to do that. It slows me down a little bit. But I'm so used to doing everything as optimal as I can that I can now do that very fast. But I had to train myself to be that way. So that's true. You'll see people that are, that just don't really care at all. Blah, 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 giant big block paragraphs. Somebody who's really good and cares. Short, concise paragraphs, usually only about 2 lines. Okay, talent works, genius creates. And I think there's truth in that too. Talent wants money. So talent does what it takes to get money, gets their money, and that's it. Versus a genius sort of says to themselves, I want to make this the best that's ever been done on this topic. So they're going to put more time into it. And that leads to creativity. Okay, Ralph Waldo Emerson. When nature has work to be done, she creates a genius to do it. Okay, that's nice. Coffee is good for talent, but genius wants prayer. Okay, the other thing too is I'm going to tell you, this multiculturalism is making people very stupid. Christianity creates more genius and more achievement than anything else. There's nothing even close. I got my Christian tie on right here. These are the colors of Christianity: faith, hope, love, and charity. All right? Okay, Calvin Coolidge. Nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a cliche. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. So basically, if you want to be great at something, you got to pay your dues, spend a long time learning it, but then you got to keep on pushing and pushing and pushing to get better and to get to the truth as best you can, and to pick up all the little skills from the adjacent fields. Thomas Edison, genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. Okay, and that's a little bit funny because Nikola Tesla would say, Edison worked so hard because he's not that smart. Okay, there's a little bit of a battle between those two because Edison was a better businessman and kind of ripped off Tesla. But anyways, like Tesla would say, if Edison would only plan a little more, he could get his experiments done so much faster. But still, persistent tenacity at getting good at something, that's a big part of it. Okay, the real difference between men is energy. A strong will with a settled purpose and invincible determination can accomplish almost anything. Okay, I got to switch over here. All right, then I got to make this thing big. My formatting is not as easy as it used to be on this program. I got to pull it. Here we go. Okay, and that is the distinction between great and little men. Thomas Fuller's quote. Matthew Arnold, genius is mainly an affair of energy. And I'd say there's some truth in that because a lot of stuff is just committing to it in a big way. So you kind of have to give up a lot of your social life. You do if you want to do a lot of things. And you just have to go. You have to go with the project, whatever it takes. Like when I want to write a book, I'll look at my schedule and I'll say, okay, here's my schedule. And I'll say, gee, I've got 5 days off, not that far apart from each other. I'll write a book right there. And you want all your time in big blocks because you have to have the whole book in your mind in order to put it all together and keep it coherent and flowing. So you have to have that time, and it's hard to do if you don't have time. Like when I wanted to be a writer, I read about Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, Robert Pirsig. He would go to sleep early, like at 9 o'clock, wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and then just write. Maybe even go to bed a little earlier. And he would just write until he had to go to work. And you have to do things a little crazy like that. That's what they mean by maniacs. Okay, so here's a quote by Ian Fleming, same sort of quote. All of the greatest men are maniacs. They are possessed by a mania which drives them forward towards their goal. The great scientists, philosophers, religious leaders, all maniacs. What else but a blind singleness of purpose could have kept them in the groove of purpose? Mania is as priceless as genius. Because what you're trying to do is improve on something, make it better than what's ever been done by any other human on the planet before. So you're not going to get that with just a good effort. It has to be a great effort, and it has to be a lot of training up to that point so that you really have the competence to do it. So you got to be a bit of a maniac compared to the effort level of a regular person. That's just what it takes if you want to be great at something. Okay, really great at something. Okay, Alexander Hamilton, one of the founding fathers of the USA, he said, all the genius I have lies in this. When I study a subject on hand, I study it profoundly. Okay? Arthur Schopenhauer, talent works for money and fame. Genius works for motives less easy to determine. Okay, and I think that's a good point. And I would say it's Christianity is the biggest thing. The biggest thing you'll find unifying most of these geniuses will be Christianity. Yeah, I know there's some non-Christian genius, of course. But what I'm saying is Christianity pulls you. Like, look at all the great nutrition experts in the world today on the internet. Why have so many of them sold out? Most of them. Why did they sell out? Why did they sell out for BS like soy or, olive oil or omega-3s or flax or high protein or all this other BS? Why? Because they view it from the conventional perspective, atheistic Darwinism. It's like, who gives a shit? Why not make money? If you consider the proles a bunch of meaningless talking apes and all you want to do is make money, then why tell the truth? But if you want to be great, you have to tell the truth or you're not great. So Christianity says you must tell the truth. It's a 10 commandment. Don't lie. That, everybody's equal in the eyes of God, so you should help the proles. They're not just a bunch of low-life talking apes. They're important people. Everyone's life has meaning, okay? So Christianity says your life has meaning. God is watching you. That which you do to the least of my brethren, you do unto me. All right, so all of that mindset and that the universe is rational, that it's knowable. We're created in the image of God, therefore we too can be creators. That gets you pumped up and wired to do something great, okay? Life has meaning. That's why atheistic Darwinism, they suck and they're a bunch of liars and they rip people off, because what atheistic Darwinism says is life has no meaning. The fact that life exists at all is just a coincidence. So you might as well get money when you can, get laid when you can, and enjoy your life. Everything else is BS. The humans are just talking monkeys, talking apes. They evolved from some chimp-like creature. Okay, I don't believe that. I believe that we're created in the image of God. Okay, and I know a lot of biology, and I can tell you, you can't explain it with all this evolutionary stuff. That can explain microevolution, variation within a species, within a family even, a genetic family, but not macroevolution. It's just way too much. Okay, let's continue here. Here's Michał Csikszentmihalyi. Hard to say that one. The unifying similarity amongst geniuses and innovators is motivational. They are interested in unique goals, different than the masses. Yeah, they see these intellectual, creative, trying to understand the world and trying to improve on something. They see it as beautiful and elegant and a very valuable way to use their time. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, skill is fine and genius is splendid, but the right contacts are more valuable than either. Yeah, I would say, because, look around, lots of people, they get their job because they had some social contact, somebody who's co-ethnic with them, or for whatever the reason, will sort of take them along, okay? And I've seen things like that too. I've seen things like that in medicine. Back when I was a young guy, almost all the medical departments were run by men, and a pretty woman would be more likely to get accepted for residency than one who was not pretty. Okay, it's just how it was. And now there's other things that are kind of like that too, all right, so we won't go any further with that. But yeah, social contacts it's nice to have them, but it's not that easy to get them unless you're sort of born into them. Okay, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, mediocrity knows nothing higher than itself, but talent instantly recognizes genius. Okay. David Ogilvy, he wrote the book about advertising, smart guy. He said, Conan Doyle wrote that mediocrity knows nothing higher than itself. My observation has been that mediocre men recognize genius, they resent it, and they feel compelled to destroy it. Yeah, I would say that's true. I've gotten in trouble for a lot of stupid stuff. You wouldn't even believe how stupid some of the stuff I've gotten in trouble for. And it's just for being smart and being good, okay? I won't even go into it. Okay, Havelock Ellis. Every man of genius sees the world at a different angle from his fellows, and there is the tragedy. Okay, that one's kind of a mild one. Ralph Waldo Emerson from his essay on self-reliance in 1841. In every work of genius, we recognize our own rejected thoughts. They come back to us with a certain alienated majesty. Yeah, we wish we had pursued that line of thought more. Ralph Waldo Emerson, again, from self-reliance, to believe your own thought, to believe that what is true for you in your private heart is true for all men. That is genius. Yeah, there's a lot of truth in that. If you know you're right, and a lot of times you'll be hesitant to speak it because it goes against conventional. Like I get all these trolls if I say anything negative about soy. Soy's for chumps, okay? It's obvious. Read their early papers on it. It's estrogenic. It's processed with hexane, neurotoxic. It's sprayed with glyphosate, neurotoxic, mitochondrial inhibitor, causer of fatty livers, according to Seneff, and leaky gut and all kinds of other problems. All right? Why would you want that? Lower sperm counts can damage the female reproductive tract, raises insulin-like growth factor. Why would you want that? Activates both types of estrogen receptors. No, thank you, and it's really high in fat. Ralph Waldo Emerson. But as simple as that is to say, you'll hear all kinds of people, including very, very famous people, saying soy is good for you. They're full of crap. They haven't read the papers, or they're lying to you on purpose. I don't know which is which. Or they paid off and selling out. Okay, Ralph Waldo Emerson. Genius believes its faintest presentiment against the testimony of all history. Now, a lot of times history is a bunch of lies written by the victors who just wanted to spread their lies. Like they'll tell you Abraham Lincoln was a great president. Abraham Lincoln was one of the worst presidents the United States ever had. Go ahead and read about him. I made a video about him. Wait till you read about him. He caused so much trouble and caused the death of so many people, it's not even funny. Will Durant. He is just a drop of water on the crest of a wave, claiming to analyze the ocean. Okay. Ralph Waldo Emerson. To be great is to be misunderstood. Yeah, all geniuses are misunderstood to some extent, but they have to push, because if you don't push, you don't achieve anything. Ben Franklin. Genius is the ability to hold one's vision steady until it becomes a reality. Okay. Got a couple more here today. Got to slide this thing over. Okay, this is from Edward Gibbon, author of The History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. So, he was a pretty big name in the 1700s in England, and he wrote this big history of Rome and the fall of the Roman Empire, but he's a bit of a pompous jerk. He tries to blame it on the Catholics. But anyways, here's what he says. Conversation enriches understanding, but solitude is the school of genius. You just have to spend a ton of time reading, because most information is in books, so you have to read. Nowadays, you can learn a lot from the computer. That's great. But you're going to have to spend some time in books, a lot of time in books. And books are a good permanent resource. If you're going to store like knowledge management systems and data files on the computer, that's a good thing to do, but make sure you have them backed up, so you don't want to lose them. Okay, Francis Galton. A gifted man will achieve greatness if he can avoid constant professional toil for maintenance of a large family, domestic sorrows, anxieties, and petty cares. So yeah, if you can not spend all your time working to give money to your family, especially an ungrateful wife. So anyways, it reminds me of a time when my kid asked me a question. One of my kids was just like about 8th grader going into high school or something like that. And he says to me, Dad, what's the fastest way, the easiest way, the best way I could get rich? And I said, well, probably the most important thing is don't have any kids. And then my wife was like standing right next to her in the room. She goes, what kind of a thing is that to say to him? And I go, oh yeah, and don't get married. Simone de Beauvoir. One is not born a genius, one becomes a genius. And I think there's truth in that. There's tons of people with high IQs. To become a genius is to take, a reasonably high IQ and then to just develop it to the max and develop it in an area of specialization. Okay, so here's another quote of Simone de Beauvoir. The individuals who seem to us most outstanding, who are honored with the name of genius, are those who have proposed to enact the fate of all humanity in their personal existence. Okay, so that's a little bit of a funny quote, because Simone de Beauvoir, she was kind of a scumbag. She hung around with Sartre. He was a communist scumbag piece of crap. Okay, guy trying to say that, Mao in China was a good guy. Okay, communists, they just KI, LL everybody and have total dictatorship power. So anyways, in real life, she was a scumbag, but this quote is kind of good. So if you're going to do something good, it should help the most people. Like I said, that's why I said McDougall was the best doctor, because he figured out how to cure the most people. Eat a starch diet. Okay, that's the big secret of health. But if you're going to do something great, you should have big goals. And people will laugh at you, but having the big goals will enable you to do a lot more than if you didn't have them. Okay, the purpose of my site is for me to become the best doctor in the world now that Dr. McDougall's dead. I think I already am. And then also to try to save Western civilization. Western civilization needs to stop apologizing and start saying, look, if you want to live in our country, live by our rules and respect our rules and have Christian ethics. Because if you don't have Christian ethics, you're going to get atheistic Darwinism. And atheistic Darwinism is just going to destroy everything. That's just the fact. Those are really the only two options. All the other stuff, it's nice, but it's not going to change anything. Those are the only two strong deciding factors. So anyways, hope that was helpful.